record on this computer. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Independent Socialists in Wellingborough meeting this evening on a theme of fighting climate change locally. This is kind of focused on the locality and the locally fighting climate change, and how to use the Council Climate Action Scorecard. And I'd very much like to welcome Don von Rohland to this evening's meeting. From so let me read my notes from Climate Action. You're the UK director, new role, campaigns and outreach director with Climate Emergency UK. And I mean, you're based in Scotland, you were telling me earlier, and you've spent last 5 years, you say, supporting community climate action in Scotland before joining your current employer, and enabling local community groups access funding and deliver successful projects around climate action and climate change. You're a keen cyclist and a carbon footprinting enthusiast. You may want to say a little bit more about what a climate footprint enthusiast is, and you're excited to support the environmental movement across the UK. So welcome to Independent Socialists in Wellingborough. You may not have heard of us, although we are famous worldwide, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the speakers that we've had. We're small but influential, I think we describe us, small but significant. We're a local group of people who describe ourselves as socialists in the broadest possible sense. We're non-sectarian, so anyone who broadly describes themselves as socialists can join us. And we have people from the Labour Party, we've had people from the Green Party that come along to our meetings, from the new Breakthrough Party and the new Transform Party, which is emerging, and other left organisations, and some people who are not in any political party, but are broadly progressive. So, and tonight, for example, we've got some people who are activists in Extinction Rebellion, and we often get people from trade unions. Russ is a member of the Unite community, and so is Bill. So we get trade unionists come along to our meetings from our locality. But anyway, without much further ado, welcome, Don, to our meeting. And if I could pass it over to you, and I know you're going to be sharing your screen with us shortly.
Thank you so much, Paul, for this lovely introduction. So as you mentioned, I currently stay in Scotland. I live in Glasgow, and I've been working with communities around Scotland to deliver climate action projects. So everything ranging from active travel, encouraging people to cycle, to community for growing projects, as well as waste reduction projects and carbon literacy. I have delivered carbon literacy training to various organizations, including the civil service here in Scotland. And today, I'm talking to you on behalf of Climate Emergency UK, as I recently started a new role as outreach director. So I'm going to be using some slides, but because there is a very small number of us, if you have any question at any point, feel free to raise your hand, and I'm happy to take any questions. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my slides, and there will be some interactive elements, so it won't be just me talking over some slides. There we go. Can you all see my slides? Yep.
Yep, I can see it. Can everybody see it?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So the goal of this presentation is to show you our brand new website, the Climate Scorecards, to show you how to analyze the data and give you some hints and tips on how to use the results to lobby your council to improve on their climate action. This talk is offered as part of a wider training program, so I would invite you to look at our website, and we have events coming up where if anyone misses this session, you can signpost them to our open training sessions. There's one coming up in the middle of November, and then there will be another one early December. All the details are on the Climate Scorecard's website. To start, I'm just going to present you the mission of Climate Emergency UK. Our goal is to inform residents and increase their understanding of what councils are doing to take action on the climate emergency. We are aiming to create a benchmark so that we know where we are in terms of how we're doing to tackle the climate emergency at the council level, and so that we can compare this in the future and see what progress has been made. And we also lobby the central government so that they provide further funding to the councils. They can take further action. In 2019, we saw a lot of councils' chambers being full of activists who were asking council to declare the climate emergency. And this was very successful. A lot of councils around the UK have declared this is a climate emergency. However, since then, there has been a lot less engagement with councils, and activists are struggling to identify what to ask council to do. And this is where we come in with the scorecards. So our main activity here at Climate Emergency UK is to create the scorecards. We just launched this one big initiative that scores every council in the UK on what they're doing to tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. Our hope is that this data is used both by council and campaigners. For councils, our hope is that they use this resource to identify best practice and learn from other councils what they're doing, so that they can improve their climate action plans. A lot of climate action plans are still very weak and don't really cover all the different aspects of the climate emergency that we would like them to cover. We'd like them to implement effective policies to drive emissions down. In the meantime, we're going to be on promoting the results so that they are more widely used and known about. And we're going to keep lobbying and advocating for more support for council climate action. We also rely on campaigners like yourself tonight to use the scorecards results to identify demands which are within the realm of possibilities for the councils, something that they can actually action despite the limitation that they might be facing in terms of budget or power. And so this is what we would like you to be able to do after this session, and after looking at the resources, being able to lobby for specific and targeted policy improvements and real local changes where you can have a visible impact. And all of this is to help reduce 1/3 of carbon emissions, which are within the council's influence. How did we go about this? How did we come up with the scorecards? We decided to assess every single local authorities in the UK across 7 sections. The buildings and heating section looks at what efforts are being made for the council to retrofit its own building as well as council homes. Are they energy efficient? The transport section looks at both the council fleet, what kind of cars are they driving, but also at the availability of public transport in the local authority, as well as the air quality. Planning and land use looks at local planning policies. Planning is one of the biggest responsibilities that councils have. They can decide whether a development project goes ahead or not. So this is a very important section for most councils. The governance and finance section looks at the funding that the council provides for climate actions, also where they invest their own money, pension funds, if they provide training to their staff on the climate emergency. Biodiversity section looks at tree coverage, nature-based solution, the use of pesticides across the council land. Collaboration engagement looks at whether councils are trying to involve all segments of the population in deciding how to implement their policies, and how they actually talk to the local residents about the climate emergency and if it's at all mentioned. And the final section is waste reduction, food and recycling, which is also another key section and includes the provision of allotments and the support of the local food economy. This is a lot, And these 7 sections have then evolved into 93 questions. And to answer these questions, we've been analyzing both national data, like air pollution in your local area, information publicly available on your council website, like the climate action plans, but also we also used freedoms of information requests to ask for very, very specific things, like have your council approved an airport extension? Has your council trained their staff on the climate emergency? And it's with those specific tasks that we've been able to assess councils and rank them from best to worst in every single of these categories. This is a timeline of the progress of the work that we've made. We started quite a long time ago in April 2022 to start researching what kind of criteria would make sense. And one of the key rationale we had is that we're not going to score councils on things that it's impossible for them to achieve. So for every question, there is at least one council in the UK that has actually scored the full mark. And so we know it's possible and they should be able to do these things. We have consulted with over 90 organizations to sense check those criteria and make sure that they were achievable and that we could collect the data. We published the metrics for the scorecards in December 2022. And we started marking the councils in February of this year. In April, after the first marking was done, we issued a right of reply period. So every council was invited to submit further information to correct the scores. And we were really amazed that over 73% of council responded this time, which was a very higher level of engagement that we've seen before. With action plan scorecards, merely half of council responded, whereas this time it was almost 3/4. So we could see the rising interest in the scorecards and the results. And following the right of reply, we then had a period of scoring audit with 50 highly trained volunteers and staff to double check all the results, making sure that we had the best information available. And we were finally able to launch on the 18th of October. Yes, Bill, do you have a question? Feel free to come off mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, please move on.
I beg your pardon. Were these UK councils?
Yes, 400 of them.
Fascinating. Thank you.
So we scored in total 400 councils. We didn't score parish councils because there's just too many of them. But I'll show you the website in a moment. So if you want to find out more about the methodology and what we've done, I'll put a link in the chat and you can find out what we've marked, what was the reason of why we decided that some things we could be assessing and some things were just outside the realm of possibilities. There are things where there's just no data available and it would be too much work to ask council to try to retrieve data. So we've been quite mindful of not creating too much work for councils also to answer questions and be very strategic in what we ask and what we don't ask. But yeah, please do look at our website if you want to find out more about the methodology. But now comes the more exciting part, the results. What have we actually learned from doing this exercise? Well, the general message unfortunately is that councils are currently generally scoring low, but this is something we expected because this is the first time we ever do this exercise. So we didn't expect everyone to do really well. We can see some differences between the different types of councils. With combined authority, which have a lot more power and a wider regional focus, and focus more on collaboration and impact at scale. They tend to have scored a bit higher. The Northern Irish Council are not doing so well according to our metrics. So there is still a lot of margin of progress for all councils. But you can also see that there is a wide range. So even within a specific type of council, single tier, for example, and with the same national barriers and the same budget constraints, but councils have performed widely differently. Like for the single tier council, it ranges from 9% to 62%. So there are also a lot of regional differences, which we are trying to understand. We are currently working with Amphysis, which is a consultancy company who's going to release a report next year to find out more about what are the regional differences and what are the factors that are influencing those scores. This is an overlook of the results by nation. Scottish Council have scored quite well, and one of the reasons for this is because it is a legal requirement for councils in Scotland to take action on a climate emergency. In England, it's not a requirement. Councils do not have to take action on climate emergency. It's not a legal requirement. So that explains why Scottish councils score a bit higher than in England. Which regions? The East Midlands, unfortunately, don't score so well. They're on the kind of bottom end of our scoring. I'll be interested to hear a bit further along your thoughts on this and what might be the reasons for this. So only 41% scored over 50% in the scorecards. However, there is some interesting differences in how council scores in individual sections. So even though the overall scores might be really low, some councils might be doing really well in some sections. So it's really worth looking at the details and not just looking at the overall scores. I'm now going to show you how to use the site. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'm going to show you the website instead. There we go. And I've conveniently already put up Northamptonshire Council.
Yeah.
So these are the results. So the website tells you that the index of deprivation, urbanization, when is the net zero target? It's 2030. And it also says that it's council only. That means that the council hasn't set a target. Would you like me to put it bigger?
Yes, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I know it's quite small on the screen, so I'll try to make it bigger. So the website shows us that the council has only set a target for its own emissions. So immediately you can think, oh, maybe we should ask the council, why don't they look at the emissions of the council area as a whole and its residents, and not just their own emissions? Because this is a very, very small amount. Council emissions is like 3-4% of your council area. So they're only targeting, and they only have targets for a very small part of the emissions in your area. And also it tells you the political control of your local area. There's a summary about the scorecards and what data we've been able to include from 2019 to March 2023. Some information about how some questions weight more than others. And we've adapted this depending on each council type, because not every council type has the same powers and is not able to influence things in the same way. You can filter the information about your council in many different ways. You can look at what we've managed to find through national data, what we've looked at from the research, the information that came out from freedom of information requests, and what's in the scope of the council and what's the wider influence they have. What's interesting here, for example, is that the lowest scoring section for this council is transport. And quite notably, they have scored negatively on one of the questions. This is something new that we didn't have in the climate action plan scorecards. We've now introduced negative questions. So if a council is actively doing something that goes against net zero and reducing carbon emissions, we've actually started to introduce negative marks. And this one is about approving a high carbon transport project since 2019. So this could be a new motorway or an airport expansions, and all of this will actually give the council negative scores. Another negative score comes from the level of pollution in the area. Again, they're not directly responsible for this, but it is within their wider influence that they should be able to do something about this. So this is why we negatively scored them for this as well. But the council scores over the average in collaboration and engagement. So I would also invite you to look at this section to kind of celebrate the achievement of your councils, and it could be a better angle to kind of talk to them about what they're doing well rather than only what they're doing bad. And there are some areas that can still be improved, like engagement with residents. So they've scored 1 out of 2. So it'd be interesting to look into the details and see what are they doing and what they could be doing to improve this. And there's still lots of criteria where they haven't scored any points. So there's still lots they could do to improve and engage with their local residents more. So they might be interested to hear about that, and we can give them advice on this. So that's the scores for an individual council. What you could do next, after you looked at your own results, is look at any neighboring councils. So if you want to type in neighboring council, you could do that. But you could also go back to the main page, and you can see where your council ranks. So if you put total score, single chair, and they've also scored by total score. You can select by section. So I wonder which council in UK scores best on building and heating, on transport. It's Camden. In Leeds is the lead for planning. So that can be a way to identify best practice. But if you want to find something that is relatable for your council, you can filter. So by the type of council here, it's you can put single chair, and then you can add advanced filters. So have a look at this. You could select to have only councils within England. If you don't want to see Scottish or Welsh council, you could decide, okay, I just want to see councils in East Midlands. And then I want to see urban with rural areas, similar as me. I only want to see what Conservatives are doing. And I want to see 4 out of 5 in level of deprivation. And there you go. We've got like a few comparable councils, which are in the same region in the UK. They're all in East Midlands. They're all the same type of council, single chair, and they have the same level of deprivation, so same level of poverty, but they score differently. Some of these councils don't have scores yet, and the reason for this is because they were recently formed, so we were not able to score them. But you still have obviously North and West Northamptonshire, which will score differently, and you might be able to learn from this. I'm not going to take any further on this website. You'll have your own chance to look at it. And just go back to the slideshow. I'm going to now present some of the ways that your council could improve. So I've updated this slide so that it shows what Northamptonshire Council is doing and is not doing. So I've color-coded this. So in green, you can see what your council is doing and whether they've actually scored well. In orange, when they partially scored, and in red, what they haven't scored any points in. And I've put in the link here on the chart on the 15 actions that councils can take. We've selected those actions because these are the actions which relatively cost less than others. So they are the one that the councils are most likely to be able to implement, despite budget restrictions that they might have. One of positive things that your council is doing is that the information that they put on the website is relatively accessible. So you can find out what the council is doing for the climate, and you can find information on what local residents can do. They have a climate action plan, and it has smart targets. So they're measurable, action-based results. They have reasonably formulated results and specific and time-specific targets. I mentioned before involvement of local residents. There's still some space for the improvement there. Feel free to look at the details on the website. Your council doesn't use renewable energy yet, so that's maybe something you want to maybe lobby for, because it's not that much of a difficult change to make. A lot of councils in the UK have done this already, switch to a renewable energy supplier, change the way that they make decisions so that they consider the climate. Positive news is that they have trained most councillors and senior staff in climate emergency training. So that is positive news. And that there is a community energy and buying scheme in your local area. So that's also positive news. Your council hasn't yet invested in electric vehicles for their own fleet. So that's also something you might want to ask them to do, to start replacing old vehicles with electric ones. And support car sharing scheme, but also other shared mobility schemes. Again, there's some elements that they are doing, but they could be doing more according to our results. This shows you another set of actions, obviously all 15 in one slide. Positive things, your council has pledged to mow the grass less, so that is positive. However, they haven't pledged to stop using pesticides on council lands. Again, that's something very easy that they can do to help protect biodiversity, and it's within their power to do, but they haven't done it yet. Another thing that they can do is ask local school to provide vegetarian meals once a week. We're not asking all the kids to go vegan, we're just asking that maybe one day a week they have a vegetarian meal, which has both health and climate benefits. We would like them to make it a requirement for new home development to be net zero. So if there's a new housing project, but the new homes are net zero and don't add carbon emissions in the atmosphere. The same goes with life cycle assessments. That's another planning policy that they should have, that they ask developers to assess how much carbon their development is going to put in the atmosphere and what they're going to do to reduce it. So that's not a requirement yet in your local area. And banning single-use plastic, that's another symbolic measure, but it's still something that easily implementable that they could do to stop providing plastic cutlery in like council events and council-approved and funded events. Again, something very simple they could do, but they're not doing it. I'm gonna stop my slides and I'm just gonna open the floor for kind of questions, but also ask you some specific questions to kind of stimulate discussions. So my first questions for you are, how do you think Northamptonshire Council is doing in the Council Climate Action Scorecards? What are your feelings after seeing the results? What action would you like them to focus on and why? And what do you think are the barriers that are stopping your council from taking further action, and what would be the solution? So these are my questions to you, and I'm now going to stop sharing the slides and we're going to have an open discussion about this. Thank you. You're on mute, I think.
Muted, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that. I mean, I was really interested to see the information from Northamptonshire, so I'm really grateful for you supplying that to us. And what I'd like to do after this meeting is to go and have a look at the website and look at things in more detail. But thank you very much for that. I wasn't expecting it in your presentation, so you've helped us already along the road to looking at some of these issues. Could I open it up to questions and comments and observations based on the 3 questions that Don has set for us? If you could indicate whether I can't, because just let me change my screen view so I can see everybody. Put it in gallery view. Yeah, I can see everybody now. So if you want to raise your hand or use the button at the bottom of the screen, So first I've got Anthony. I can see, Anthony, you've got yours. If you'd like to unmute. If everybody unmutes, then I don't have to keep reminding you. As long as there's no background noise where you are, that should be okay. But Anthony, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to say that you've got down that Northampton Council is mowing less. But in my experience, I live just on the edge of a park. And as far as I can see, they're not mowing less at all. They're mowing more. Paul and I had a meeting last year with a chap on the council who was responsible for mowing. And he said they would mow less and they would put up notices everywhere saying, you know, we're not mowing this area for reasons of biodiversity and so on. So here we have a council saying that they're doing something, but they seem to be doing the opposite, not doing it.
That gives you an even stronger standpoint to call them out on it and say, well, you've pledged not to do this. Why are you doing it? Yes, Peter, you have a question?
Yeah, mowing less means two different things, time and space. It's quite possible that they are doing a council somewhere is mowing less space, but not mowing less in time, in the times of a year. And the two really need to be distinguished from the point of view of biodiversity. Would make quite a difference. So the simple question needs to be unsimple, in my opinion.
Who else
Would that perhaps affected any answer given?
Anyone else wants to make a comment? Tony. And then
yes. Yeah, how much is Northamptonshire North like many other councils? Because you seem to paint a picture there that they are big on decorations and to some extent communications, but they aren't very big on investment. So they aren't very big on actually shelling out the money. And I'm just wondering whether that's a common pattern across lots of councils. Perhaps councils would say that they're particularly strapped for money. They've been constrained over so many years. And if there are other responsibilities they have, like social services or education, are they more inclined to put money into those areas? And have you got any sort of indicators from councils who have invested in some of the things you're talking about, like energy schemes, public transport, environmentally friendly public transport schemes, council buildings being properly insulated, all big money areas. So the question is, sorry to have rambled on a bit, but the question is, how reflective is Northamptonshire in its being able to, in its promoting sort of low cost options, saying they're consulting, putting out publicity, whatever, relatively low cost issues, big cost, big ticket issues are very much hard, very much harder. Is that reflective of lots of councils? And where councils are putting big money into things, can you identify how they're able to do that?
Yes, so but your question kind of takes me to the points I was last talking about, where how do you find out what other councils are doing and how can you compare it? So I briefly showed you the neighboring councils, which was performing very, very similarly. So it is true that with similar challenges, we see similar results. But you could also maybe look at widening I narrowed down the criteria very narrowly so that there was only 2 results that you could compare, but you could try to find out maybe outside the East Midlands if there is other councils that have similar challenges and what they are doing. But also another way you can make those comparisons is by looking on your own kind of council scores, and on the right hand side it will show you how many councils of this type have done this action. So for example, as you said, retrofitting on its own building to make them low carbon, only 6 councils out of 186 have done that, because as you mentioned, it's a very cost-intensive measure. So not too surprising, but Northern Council hasn't been able to do it because only 6 out of 186 have done that. But you could see that there are some. This action, for example, is the council part of a program, a partnership to support home retrofitting through providing skills and training. So this means that the council supports householders to improve their home insulation, and that they help people accessing jobs in this field. And we found that 103 councils out of 186 have taken action towards this. So some of these actions have been actually quite widely adopted, but you're right to say that the most costful one haven't. But yeah, so it's worth really looking at the details and not to get deflated by the overall results. I think the most quality you can get from the scorecard is looking at the results. I think a lot of people will just look at the overall scores and get an opinion based on this, but to me, it's really the details which really are interesting. Yes, Russ?
My question is on a slightly different subject, so I don't know if anyone wanted to continue with that conversation. But if not, I'll carry on. My question's about the for one of the examples. No, sorry. My question is about whether you have on the website examples of or information about that will give you the ability to question some of the responses you're going to get. So, for example, one of the things on there was use of pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could argue why on earth they're using pesticides. Now, no doubt they'd have a reason for why they're using pesticides. I can't believe it's just that they can be bothered. So there's going to be a response. So are there do you have case studies of other councils who have stopped using pesticides?
Yes.
And how they went about it?
Yes. So thank you for bringing that question, actually. If you go into the biodiversity section on the website and you go into the questions, I've put the link, by the way, so you can open it yourself and you don't just rely on me sharing my screen. So if you go into the question on mowing, is one of them. Yes, committed to mowing their green space less for wildlife. Actually, it's a very popular 148 councils out of 186 have made a commitment in that direction. So, yeah. And then you can see which one have and haven't, and then it'll come up with a list.
Don, you're not showing your screen.
Yeah, I know. So this is the question, and you can see how it's marked, and it gives you a link to the evidence, and it also gives you how did we find this information? Volunteer research. So it's just one of our volunteer browsing the internet looking for the information. It won't be a local resident, and it won't be based on actual observation. It's a volunteer and what they could find on the internet. How we scored it, quite low because obviously the carbon impact of this is quite small, but it is still meaningful, especially for biodiversity. And then there is a link to the evidence. So if you open to a new tab, it tells you this is where the data is. So they do have a pollinator strategy where they said how they're going to protect biodiversity. So all this information is linked on the website. And then likewise, if you want to see what other councils are doing, you click on this, and then you have all the councils that have done that. Again,
Can you show it? Can you show it for my pesticide question? You're on mowing the grass at the moment. I was specifically asking about pesticide.
Oh, pesticide, sorry. Pesticide, there we go. Oh, only 13 out of 186. So you're right, there's only 13 who have done that. So, yeah. Go to so we haven't. Oh, sorry, that didn't work. Have to go into. Struggling to find an example here of one that hasn't. I know that there are 13s that have. Gonna have to look into it.
Just as a general question, while we're on the subject, does anyone have any answers to that question? What is the alternative for a council? Let the weeds grow, or is?
It seems to be the policy of North Northamptonshire currently in Wellingborough not to use pesticides, because there's biodiversity, if I could say like that, springing up everywhere, from pavements, sides of roads, sides of buildings. Whereas some years ago they used to spray regularly with pesticides and there'd be no growth. So I've got a sneaky feeling that they have stopped using pesticides. I think that's more to save money, perhaps, rather than perhaps a deliberate policy decision. But to be honest, we need to find out more about what North Northamptonshire are doing using this scorecard, which I think, Don, is what you're suggesting. We need to look at the scorecard, drill down into it, and then start to ask some serious questions of North Northamptonshire Council. I mean, some of the areas that we've already been looking at, for your information, is air pollution. For Wellingborough, that is. We haven't. I mean, in North Northamptonshire, it covers quite a wide area from Corby, Kettering, Rushden. In Wellingborough, where we're based, we have been looking at air pollution, and there is part of the town, in the town centre area, which has been registering higher than statutory norms, if you like, on a fairly regular basis, except during the COVID period when it dropped. We're currently awaiting the most current, the figures for last year. Apparently the report is with the with central government before they can release it in terms of the data from last year. But we're planning to follow that through if and when we get that report from them in terms of air pollution. So Anthony wants to come in there.
Just before we do, I just have an answer for your question. So I did find an example. If you look at Bath and North East Somerset Council, they have banned the use of pesticides on their green space. So you can look at their results, and if you go into the question 5.2, it takes you to the evidence. If you want to find out more about how they have become pesticide free, it takes you to their website, and this is where you can find more about this. There's some success stories about how to reduce the use of pesticide by councils. So there we go, we found it. And the way I found it was by going onto the website and then filtering the councils by which one scores really well on biodiversity. So while I wasn't able to pick on specific questions, I just scored all the councils by section, and Bath and North East Somerset is one of the best ones for biodiversity. So that's how I've been able to find this information. Yes, so Anthony, did you have a question?
You need to unmute, Anthony. No.
Yeah. Yeah, on the subject of air pollution, literally 50 yards from where I live and 10 yards from where we, Wellingborough Extinction Rebellion, of which some of us are members of, is the most heavily polluted area in the whole of Wellingborough. And we've brought this up with the council, and they say that they're not part of a air quality monitoring area. Now, do you think it's important that we should pursue them and say, why aren't you part of these AQMAs?
Absolutely. I think every local authority at every level has something to do with air pollution. I mean, if they are approving very polluting development projects, they are actively contributing to the air pollution in the local area. So they can't just say that it's not their responsibility. They do all have something to at play to do. So yeah, I would definitely pursue that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I just had a few slides to go through before we finish, if that's okay, just to show you all the resources we have. So I'm just gonna go over them quite quickly. Just I don't want to take more of your time, and I do aim to finish at 8. So I'm just going to share my slides just briefly. Just talking you through other resources that we have on our website. So if you could see that, that's great. So we have developed a guide on how to engage with councils, and we also created a media pack on if you want to talk to local press about this and the scorecard, and tell them why do you care about the results and any thoughts or feelings you have about the results. And you will also be able to find all the infographics about your local councils and share about it on social media. There's also a lot of like templates on if you want to tweet about this, you'll be able to find this in our media pack, as well as press releases and letters to editors. So these are some very kind of broad hints and tips on how to lobby your councils. Looking at which section did they score the poorest, that's maybe something you want to target more. You could look at what other councils immediately neighboring to yours have done. Looking at the 15 improvements. So I'll be sharing a copy of the slides after this that Paul can share with you. So you can see which one of the 15 your council are already doing and which one they haven't. And those are actions that are not too costing, so they should be able to implement them. And it also has, our website also has information on who has the power and how can you influence them, because it's quite a complex system, how council works. And there's also a guide I want to share with you from People on Planet, which kind of tells you more about activism and how to get people behind your cause. We have our own campaigners guide, which includes detailed information about how council works. How can you submit the questions for a general council meetings, so that every councillor has to kind of listen to your questions and provide an answer. How do you talk to your councillors? Councillors are happy to listen to you, and they have dedicated time where you can speak to them. So we've got some information about how do you get an appointment with them. And if you want to host a public event like this one, how would you go about it? We've got information on that. It's all in our campaigners guide. So please do have a look at it. We also have a crowdfunder So we really appreciate that not everyone is able to contribute, but even just sharing the crowdfunder is really helpful. It allows us to keep our work going and also to update the data, because the data is only good for now. In a year's time, 2 years' time, it'll be out of date. So we need to do all of this work again. This is why our donations are really important. We are independent. We are not funded by central government or local authorities. We are an environmental watchdog, and we therefore look for independent funding from private and trusts. There will be more sessions like this that you can find on our website, on the how to use the scorecards section of the website. And there's also an sign-up form that I'd like to share with you. If you'd like to host a conversation like this, and you want to be a facilitator, I can send you the slide deck in PowerPoint format. If you want to incorporate that in your work and your activism, feel free to complete this form if you want to receive this. And I can also connect you with other campaigners who are willing to kind of facilitate events like this. And finally, another last bit I'll put in the chat is the feedback form. Really like to hear your thoughts on how this event went and what we could do to make it better. Please, if you have time, please do fill it out. And that takes me to the end. I'll just put in my contact details, and after that, can stop the slideshow. So I'm conscious it's a lot of information that I've just threw in the chat. So I will send follow-up emails to Paul that he can share with you where this information will be put in a more digestible format. But yeah, does anyone have some questions?
Peter.
If I may, I'd like to go back to mowing. I'm basically an ecologist and working with wildlife, so it's a matter of interest to me, and I think I might have some insights. In a way, I'm rather disappointed by this, what I've heard about the presentation, because the headings are they embrace too many different things. And if I take the example of mowing, and we're reducing our mowing, just 3 possibilities. You could reduce the mowing by not mowing as many places. You could reduce the mowing by not mowing so often. You could reduce the mowing by changing the height of the cutter so that you're not producing billiard table type lawns. And then you can do combinations between those. And then one more. There's the connectivity of areas left unmown. If you're mowing some and not mowing others, the connectivity of the areas matters a hell of a lot to various invertebrates, particularly those that don't fly, and there's plenty of those. So to say, have you reduced your mowing, isn't really drilling down in itself to things which are having a positive effect, can be shown to have a positive effect, as much as, say, some other version of doing less mowing. You might be able to do a much cheaper one, which would have better effects. So that's only because I know about mowing, you know, a few things like mowing. But the connectivity business and the height of the cut and all of those things matter a hell of a lot. Now, that I happen to know about that, and I know damn all about most of the other things you talked about. But if there are similar things, similar subgroups of activity that councils could decide upon, then it may well be that the yes, no, or whatever marking system could be leading one astray. I don't know. You may not want to come back on that, Don, but it's a thing that's worried me during this.
No, I do. Thank you so much for telling us more about the different kind of strategies on like how to protect biodiversity through mowing less. As you can tell from the scorecards, we've really tried to assess everything, and so obviously we couldn't go into that level of details. The same goes with tree planting. We've kind of scored how much hectares of trees councils have been planting, but we've not been able to assess how solid their plans were to make sure that the trees remain healthy. And so these are the details that unfortunately we've not been able to take into account because the information is not easily accessible. Or a volunteer which hasn't been fully trained and doesn't understand all the intricacy of what you were just explaining wouldn't be able to assess this. So this was outside the scope of this research, but definitely something we would like activists like you to look into and then educate your council about.
Could I just add?
It might be possible, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. It might be possible to actively look on at least some of the scorings, more of them as time goes on, to seek local people who would be prepared to analyse the good effects, if you like, and report back on that subject. I don't know if that's going to prove possible. This is really drilling down to a lot of minutiae in many cases, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is really important, especially when we are going to be scoring this question next. It's really important that we have all this information, and that might allow us to determine where progress has been made. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think your knowledge in this area exceeds all of us on this particular this call. I think with scorecards, I mean, scorecards are really important in a whole range of areas, particularly in monitoring local government and indeed national government scorecards in a variety of different areas. They tend to focus on quantitative data because that's much easier to measure. When it comes to qualitative data and qualitative changes, it's much more difficult to do in scorecards. Yeah. But I think that the people who draw up scorecards are acutely aware of this and do try to build in qualitative measures as well. But even so, there's often so many qualitative aspects to any particular area that to cover them all would just make it unwieldy. So you, in a sense, you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea in terms of both trying to keep it simple and targeted, but at the same time trying to be nuanced in what you want to achieve through a scorecard. If you keep your eye on the prize, sometimes, I mean, it's about carbon reduction, isn't it? Mainly, the scorecard, and that's. I suppose if you keep your eye on carbon reduction as the main feature, perhaps you leave out of the scorecard some of those areas which are important, but actually are more. I mean, wildlife habitat is much more a feature, a symptom of climate crisis, rather than a cause of it. So if you keep focused on the climate crisis and what's contributing to that, which is by and large carbon emissions, then the scorecard becomes much more effective because you're focused in on carbon emissions, but you're not ignoring diversity because that's an important, that you can mitigate some of the effects of climate change through measures that increase diversity, like mowing, but they're in a sense a secondary mitigating effect of sustaining biodiversity rather than the cause, if you know what I mean. Does that?
The scorecard really tried to assess both action taken by the council both on the climate crisis and the biodiversity loss crisis. We really tried both, and that's why biodiversity features as the entire section on its own. We didn't want biodiversity to be lost in the details. Sure. And to be a sub-part of planning or sub-part of food. That's why we decided that biodiversity should have its own section and assessed separately. So it doesn't get lost in the details. So we really intentionally tried to do that. But yeah, I recognize we can't capture everything, unfortunately.
If I was in charge, I'd require councils to put together a gang of people, gang of specialists across the range of things talked about, and act on what they say locally, because I mean it'll change from place to place as well. When dealing with the Dartmoor sort of place is entirely different from dealing with I don't know, Norfolk seaside places. So you need to have local people who really know stuff, listen to them, and build in local solutions. That's vast. But I mean, there's due to be in I think a couple of years' time a new O level for schools in natural history studies. And my immediate thought was, hell's teeth, the teachers don't know enough. And we get people phoning us all the time because we have orchards. We get people phoning us in February, can we come and pick raspberries? What? You know, the adult has been led into the shops to serve profits and led away from the stuff that's there around them that they could know about and appreciate and use and not misuse. I'll just shut up now because I've gone on far too much.
Thank you, Peter. Tony, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wonder whether there's another political aspect to what you're talking about, Don, which, because for example, over pesticides, my understanding is some European countries, they've gone about defining what a pesticide is, and they've said you can't use it. It's against the law. So, you know, I could envisage a situation in which governments, say one of the UK governments said, we want to really do something about pesticides. So could that actually be that one of the governments said, like France, we're going to define what pesticides we don't want, and I'm afraid, you know, we're going to determine this over and beyond what councils. And it may be that there are other areas that actually there are some councils who are so concerned about this in terms of pollution of cities, for example, that they just say, you know, Birmingham, London, Manchester says, we can't go on with this level of pollution. And then hopefully the government then says, you're right, you're the biggest cities, we're poisoning half the kids. We can't let it go on. It can't go on. It can't, you know. So, you know, it seems to me
the Conservatives don't quite use the election as badly enough, and suddenly the Labour Party reverses all its policies on ULEZ and attacks its own mayor for introducing ULEZ. You know, bizarre, but
I'm just raising that sort of combination of what you're talking about, Don, in terms of local people, local councils, and, you know, many people who would say in the environmental movement, this has got to go beyond councils. We have to have some government steer on this and government control.
Absolutely. It would be ideal if some of these actions were just imposed top down and it was just a blanket kind of ban on pesticide nationwide. But in the meantime, we could do a lot at the local level, and you can find that your local council is more approachable and easy to talk to than national MPs. But you can also try. I would try both avenues and sign petitions for both. Yeah.
Okay.
We just focus more on councils because we
so often it's pressure from below as well that creates the momentum for change nationally. So if enough local councils were saying we can't do this without you legislating, then perhaps there'll be, and if local people are saying we want you to legislate on this issue rather than having piecemeal local actions, then that will generate perhaps the momentum for change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions? People who haven't contributed or asked a question yet? Derek? Roy, Bill. I mean, Bill, you contributed early, but is anybody? This is your final chance, really, for to ask a question or to make an observation.
Yeah, if I may, yeah, apologies for coming late. So I'm not quite sure, what I'm saying fits in with the meeting's agenda, as it were. But Anthony mentioned grass cutting. I think there are area variations on that one, Paul. They haven't cut the grass verges in Geddington for a long time, and the verge outside my house is thriving, much to the almost concealed disgust of neighbours, because they're all into looking after their verges with pesticides, herbicides, and all the lot. And a little bit outside my front door is thriving. Yeah. So yeah, I know this is about an organisational thing, but there is psychology, revolving or evolving about pesticides and herbicides and so on. And I read in different parts of the world, Spain and Australia spring to mind, where there is a sort of anti-lawn movement. And if you look at history, I mean, lawns are a fairly new phenomenon, but they were or are a mark of respect in respectable semi-detached suburbia. So I think what I'm saying is change comes but slowly. The council, as far as grass cutting goes, I think uses it as cost-cutting exercise and then dress it up as being friendly, while at the same time telling people who vote for them or who they want to vote for them that we've got to get the lawns back to where they were as soon as the government gives us a little bit more money. So I know I'm going off the agenda slightly, but I mean, in local government, I've been out of it for about 20 odd years, but in local government, there are some pretty strong pressure groups, as has been pointed out. I mean, I don't know whether the LGA now have an environmental committee. They used to, and used to provide some interesting papers that were disseminated amongst local authorities. But I realise that this meeting, if you like, is more about the structures and how the structures can help, rather than the way I'm approaching it. And I apologise for being late and making a belated contribution.
Thanks, Roy.
We really try to be the bridge between councils and campaigners. So the LGA is one of the actors that we actually talk to about the scorecards, and we try to make them aware of it. But they do see Climate Emergency UK as being more activist focused. So it's very hard to please everyone. We're in that difficult spot where we really try to be the bridge between the two and be respected both by environmental campaigners and councils, and being able to talk to everyone.
Thank you very much, Don. I think we're coming. We will continue for a few minutes with some business that we have to perform. You're very welcome to leave the meeting now. Don't feel if you want to. Just to say, finally, Derek's our treasurer. We normally, when we have speakers, make a contribution to the organisation that we've invited to speak. So certainly we'll make a contribution. And Derek's waving his hand because he presumably wants to propose something. Do you, Derek? Please
He'll have to unmute himself.
Yeah, Derek, you need. Yeah.
Yeah, no. No, I just want to make a point. I've kept quiet for a number of reasons, but go back to the pesticide one, and people were talking about that, and Tony mentioned, what about if a country wanted to ban this, that, and the other? This is a lot more local. This has come from a councillor whose name I won't mention, but this is what was passed at a Mears Ashby Parish Council meeting, that they were going to ban the weed killer glyphosate from the parish, including any that NC and highways wanted to spray. And so the question is how this is going to work out when this comes up to NC, when you've got I was going to say a lower parish, a less important parish, saying we are banning this, and that means we are banning your machines in our area. So that's something to take a look at. And the other thing I'm interested in, I love data, but data is only as good. Sorry, forget that bit. I've got this, which you may remember, Paul, Northamptonshire Climate Change Strategy 2020 to 2023. And whilst the slides were going up about how good Northamptonshire was performing, I was glancing through this action plan, and my initial response is that this action plan bears no resemblance at all to the results of the survey. It really doesn't. I think, you know, as Peter said, it's quite easy to lie. So somebody's lying, because this is an active action plan. It's, you know, but it makes lovely reading. And I would say, well, look, your survey is a load of nonsense, because this is what we're doing. And basically,
to be fair, Derek, I think the survey on the scorecard said that the council was very good at producing the strategies and communicating this, but actually they weren't performing very good at all on implementing it.
No,
in a whole range of areas. So to be fair to the survey.
Yeah, but there are things, there's a lot of detail in here. What I'm saying is there's enough here to hang themselves with.
Sure.
Because this is what they've said they're going to do. And now you've got someone else saying this isn't being done. And I think that's the beauty of what's been said tonight. You've got to use the two, the official plan and the results of the survey. But it will require quite a bit of work. Sorry, I'll go back to speaking.
No, you're absolutely right, Derek.
Thank you. I think that was a really good conclusion.
That's one of the reasons why we're holding this meeting. Hopefully, as a result of this, we may have more ammunition if we want to take up, and we need to be targeted in our approach as to what we take up. But we've got the scorecard. We can have a look at it, and we can perhaps pursue some of the issues more vigorously. I mean, we only discussed on yesterday, I think, about possibly using freedom of information requests much more vigorously to collect information and challenge them on areas in terms of their performance. That we're talking in the context of air pollution. If we don't get this report from them soon, then instead of waiting for this report, like waiting for Godot, we put in a freedom of information request with very specific and targeted information.
Sorry, can I just ask one more point? If I'm not mistaken, the data is collected by volunteers to make up the scorecards. Is there any chance at all of being able to contact the volunteer who was responsible for collecting and analysing the data provided by Northants Council, or is all that confidential?
We can informally ask. So one of the only challenges is that with this version of the scorecards, there is not one single volunteer that assessed the entire council's climate action. There were several because we looked at things by sections rather than by councils.
Right.
So there is a specific section that you're interested in. I could reach out to a volunteer that assessed your council's, for example, by how they scored on biodiversity. And I could also, so I could ask them if they would be happy to be contacted.
Don, if I mean, we've got your email address. I've got your email address, and you put it in the in the chat. We may follow up with you. It may not be you that's the person, but you would act as the filter, if you like, for passing it on to the relevant person within the organisation who could perhaps answer our questions. Are you okay about that? If
yeah. So if you have any specific question, feel free to email me, and I'll try to connect with the right person. They might or might not be available because, as I mentioned, they are all volunteers.
Volunteers, yeah.
We provided them with trainings, but it's time limited projects, and now their work is done. But what I'm happy to try to reach out to them. So I sent the email to the wrong person.
Just for everyone's information, I have been saving the chat with all the email addresses and website links as we go along. So I will circulate that to everybody on this call when I get round to sorting things out within the next few days. So if you bear with me, all the information in the chat will be available shortly.
Yeah, and feel free to copy me in so that they have my email address.
I'll be sending you the chat and also a link to this recording, Don, so that you've got this recording as well. It'll be it's on YouTube. So if ever you want to show it to other people, feel free. It will be an open link. Derek, did you have a proposal for donation to climate action?
Yeah, I'd like to propose the £50, which is probably about the standard we do, really, I think.
Yeah.
So I just need the bank details, and I will transfer the £50 over.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this. We actually have a crowdfunder, which means that donations are matched, so it'll be double to 100, thanks to the Aviva Community Fund, who are kind of currently doubling our donations.
We've got a business meeting after this. We'll
sort something out. Don't worry.
I saw the crowdfunder, which doubles it. Yes, that might be the best way of doing it.
So instead, we give 25, Derek, and it doubled to 50 that you proposed.
Yeah.
We give 50, and it doubled up to 100.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed talking with each one of you.
Well, thank you very much, Don, for
yes.
your contribution this evening, and it was really good, really informative and challenging meeting, because we're going to have to do some work afterwards. But thank you very much, and if we can say thank you in the usual way. Okay, so if you want to leave us now, that's fine, and we'll get on with our boring bit of the meeting.
I'll let you get on with the orders of business.
I'll leave.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
Yeah. Right. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
I'll leave you because I'm a foreigner. I don't live in Northants. But thanks for having me.
No, you're not a foreigner, Peter. You're a regular. Okay, so just some quickie announcements. I mean, people may have them. Just to say.
Bye.
Okay, Peter. Thank you.
Bye, Peter.
Thanks for your contributions. Just to say that there's some notices really. Palestine Solidarity Northamptonshire have got a vigil for Palestine Gaza, not this weekend, but the following weekend, the 1st in November, I think it's the 4th, on a Saturday, 12 o'clock outside the Grosvenor Centre by the Cobbler's Last. So please spread the word. It will be a silent vigil for at least the first half an hour, and then people can shout and do whatever they want to do after that. But it will no longer then be a PSC event, because we're just promoting it as a silent vigil. But people, we find, want to express themselves verbally by chanting through slogans and what have you. So the meeting will evolve into a non-silent protest. So that's a week on Saturday. I don't know, Anthony, if you wanted to say anything specifically about XR and what plans we've got coming up.
Well, we're really working on this whole thing about air pollution, aren't we? And we've got somebody coming over who's been involved in air pollution in Northampton to talk to us. So that's our main focus at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. Tomorrow evening, there's a Gary Young event. As I think most of you will be aware of that. Gary Young, the Guardian journalist and TV journalist, will be speaking in Wellingborough at the African Caribbean Centre at 7 o'clock. And you can just turn up. It's a free event with donations will be sought afterwards. But it's 7 o'clock at Wacker. Russ, did you want to say about the Braunston Canal workers?
Yes, thanks, Paul. Yeah, this is an event on the 4th of November, and this commemorates the centenary of the Braunston Canal strike. We're going to be over in Braunston, and there's an opportunity before it all starts to just walk around the marina and see where all the action took place 100 years ago. It's a fascinating story. It's really going to be a great evening. After the walk around on the site, there's going to be a free buffet, and we've got local people who are doing sort of some, home cooking, and it's going to be really nice food. And then there's a play. This is a play by two people who actually live on the boats, and they do all sorts of productions around the canals. And this is something they've done before in Braunston, and we've Unite Community, which is my union, commissioned an extra performance of this. So there's going to be a performance, which is just over an hour, and that's the play is all about. It's looking at the strike through the eyes of a boat woman. And these, I don't know if you know anything about it, but the people who worked in the canals actually lived on the boats. And the only person who was paid to work was the man of the boat. The women and the kids used to help out as well. They used to work really hard. Their children didn't go to school. They had no schooling at all, but they weren't paid. So after 2 sets of wage cuts, they decided to go on strike. They hadn't been unionised before. Transport and General Workers, which is now Unite, supported them. And the strike went on for 14 weeks. The play is a little bit, it's not exactly a positive view of strikes, put it this way. It's seen through the eyes of a boat woman, how it affected her. Now you can imagine, she wasn't asked, she wasn't given a vote. She wasn't asked if she wanted to strike, and she had to carry on life on a boat, which was normally moving up and down the canal, which was now static for 14 weeks in a place where, she was regarded as an immigrant, by local people, sort of someone not from that area, so you can imagine a bit of hostility there. They were struggling. So you can understand her having a sort of fairly negative view. We're going to follow it with a panel discussion, and we've got a local historian, we've got the person who wrote and directed the play on the panel, and also Sean Kettle, who's the regional officer for Unite. So we'll be able to examine, we'll explore, what was it worth it? What did they get out of it? Was there any point in it? So that's all going to take place on Saturday, 4th November. If you go to Eventbrite, it's a week on Saturday, yes. So if you go to Eventbrite and just, look for Braunston, or contact me or Paul if you want to go. There's still plenty of tickets left. It's only £3, and that's the money that we collect is going to go to a local food bank. So it's a really good evening, and I'd love to see you all there. Can I also do a plug for another thing my union's involved with, Paul, and that's working with Fuel Poverty Action. There's a campaign called Unite Energy for All campaign, and they're going to do some stunts. There's going to be a planned stunt on the 22nd of November in Corby, and we're going to install a sort of a prepayment meter, cardboard prepayment meter. We haven't decided where yet, but it would be nice if it was Tom Pursglove's office, if we can find where it is, or someone like that. So, and then it's also going to be some warm-up protests where we go into a building and take it over with placards and things, and they're going to be, I think it's 1st and 2nd of December. They are, so that's something else to look out for. Thanks, Paul.
Could you give us a bit on the? It's Wednesdays during the day, is it, Russ? It's a Wednesday, the 22nd.
The 22nd, yes.
Do you know what time, or an indication of the time? Is it afternoon, morning?
It's going to be evening. Yeah, I don't know actually, Paul. It's a good point. I haven't got that information yet.
Okay.
Where
if you let me have it, I can circulate that. Where you're meeting and the time. I put it in my diary, but I don't know yet. Normally we have our XR meetings in the morning, but we'll see. Let me know when and how it's taking place. I'd certainly like to support it.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, but Peter Bone, I presume everybody's aware of what's happening with Mr. Hardman Bone, or Hard Bone Man. He of course, has been found guilty of bullying, harassment, and sexual misconduct by the Houses of Parliament. If anyone asks, it's actually Parliament that's now voted on it. So he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's guilty, because some people are saying, oh, he's innocent until proven guilty. Parliament and an independent commission has found him guilty. End of. And there's now going to be a recall petition in Wellingborough over the next few weeks, which is going to be interesting. It needs 8,000 people in Wellingborough to say that they want a by-election. And apparently you vote, or you say you want to recall the MP at a number of polling stations that will be set up and open over several weeks. There'll be 10 polling stations in 9 polling stations in 9 wards across the constituency, which will be open for people to say. You can also vote by ballot, a postal ballot, in the usual way for an election, and you can also do it by proxy. Proxy votes will be accepted as well. So it will be very interesting to see if the people of Wellingborough vote for a by-election. My personal view is there's a chance that Bone may re-stand for election, and that will also be interesting, because he'll be standing as an independent. But it seems to me he's very much a Trump type figure. He's so bloody arrogant and what have you, that he might very well think he can do a Trump, and stand and get re-elected. So there's going to be some challenges for the people of Wellingborough, I think, over the next few weeks. If he is recalled, the election will be in the new year, January or February, as I understand it. Any comments or observations on that, or you're all happy bunnies? You're all happy bunnies?
Well, the Labour candidate will be parachuted in from a great height, I'm sure. The locals won't have any say.
I'm sure
the
you're
local
right.
Labour Party won't have any say who's the candidate is. So you can imagine what sort of candidate it will be.
We'll have to wait and see. I was thinking, actually, Russ, whether the MP for Northampton North might put a hat in the ring for Wellingborough for the by-election.
Sorry, you're saying she?
Sally Keeble.
No, she's not the MP.
No. Is she not the candidate?
She's not the candidate, because she has now got kind of retired from that. She's now got a position as a sort of regional Labour link. There is a candidate for Northampton North. It's been selected. She's been doing a lot of campaigning. I wouldn't have thought she'd jump ship at this stage, because she's been doing a lot of campaigning I meant
Sally Keeble. Will Sally Keeble she won't
for
a by-election?
That's an intriguing question, Paul. I hadn't thought about that. She might find the allure too strong to resist.
And if she's region, she could be catapulted in.
That's a good point, Paul. Oh my God.
I think really what we've got to keep our eye on as a priority is simply to get these 8,000 votes. Basically, there's absolutely no reason why that can't happen. There's at least, from the last general election, I don't know the exact figures, but I think there's at least 12,000 Lib Dem and Labour votes. So there shouldn't really, on paper, be any reason why there can't be a by-election. And I think we get the by-election, and then some of the issues to do with who the candidate is and so on. But I think, all in all, the most important thing is we get rid of a Tory, and let's keep that very firmly in mind. I really think that there's a whole lot of other issues that can come up, but essentially the first thing is get 8,000 names on this, and then make sure we have the by-election so the Tory can be kicked out, because there's a very good chance that can be done in the present circumstances, and maybe the chance won't come again. You know, these circumstances now are the most optimum circumstances to get rid of bone. You know, we're looking at polling, polling which says it's quite within the possibilities of being able to do this. So let's do it.
I imagine you get quite a few Conservatives signing that petition as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
They
My
went-
understanding is there's only been one occasion where a recall commission ballot has failed, and that was in Northern Ireland with with Paisley, I think his son, and it failed, but very narrowly. So normally recall petitions are successful, but this is Wellingborough, of course. You know, we'll have to wait and see. Sorry, Russ, I interrupted you.
No, I was just finishing off and just saying I'd imagine there's quite a few Conservatives would like to put themselves out of their misery.
Yeah.
You know, each day that goes by, there must be, you know, really churning.
Well, the guy who
be a
was
horrible
bullied,
experience.
of course, the guy who was bullied by Bone was a Conservative, and he reported the bullying to the Conservative Party 4 or 5 years ago. It's taken that long, and it's been covered up by the Conservative Party locally for several years now. And the guy only went to the parliamentary complaints procedure because of the failure of the local Conservative Party to take any action. So there's a lot of people actually in the Conservative Party, I think, are pretty cheesed off with Bone and what happened and how it was dealt with. And so hopefully we'll see a number of Tories vote for it as well. Okay, I'm going to close the meeting now, if that's okay. I just realised actually I didn't stop the recording.
I think Bill wants to say something.
No,
Bill, yeah.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye,
Oh, right.
Bill.
Thank you for
Okay.
having me. That was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
See you
If only-
again.
does anybody know how to edit videos? Because I think this last part of the discussion should be edited before I go public with this recording. Does anyone know how to edit videos? No. I'll make some inquiries. Anyway, thank you very much for coming, everybody, and we'll see you at the next meeting, which is in the 4th Thursday in November. We did have a speaker lined up, but he's pulled out. So we're going to have to find somebody. Any suggestions? Welcome for a speaker for our November meeting.
Yeah, Paul, some time ago we were going to have the railways chap, the expert on railways. It didn't materialise for whatever reason. I was looking forward to listening to him.
Yeah,
But
Tony,
is there any
Tony, you were
possibility
doing-
of getting him?
You need
Sorry?
to unmute, Tony. You need to unmute.
Jan Voldemir, great author on railways, probably very busy at the moment on various meetings over HS2 and so on, but we can try him again, but I doubt whether we can be sure that he'll come this year. Perhaps we can, if he's not able to come this coming November, then next year. Is that okay, Roy? If we try and contact him again?
Absolutely.
But you know how high a profile the whole situation of railways and so on has become, and it's not going to go away. I don't think it's still going to be very, very important, isn't it? I know he's got the bit between his teeth about issues about Northern Railways and connections and all of that.
Okay. So we'll try, Roy. We'll see. But if
Good.
anybody else has got any suggestions for the November meeting, please email me. Okay. So I'll end the meeting now and see you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Paul. Thanks, everybody.